We light a candle for the Tao, honoring the universal path of harmony and equilibrium, the natural way. We light a candle for these shamanic traditions, honoring the beliefs and practices of all indigenous people, the way of primal spirituality. We light a candle for Hinduism, honoring the path of knowledge, action, and devotion. We light a candle for Judaism, honoring the ethical path of living by sacred law. We light a candle for all forms of Buddhism, honoring the Four Noble Truths and the path of compassion. We light a candle for all forms of Christianity, honoring the Christ consciousness as the path of love. We light a candle for all forms of Islam, honoring the path of surrender to divine love as the highest calling. We light a candle for the universalistic religion of Baha'i, honoring the path of unity and peace. We light a candle for all forms of New Thought, honoring the metaphysical path of mental healing through the practice of universal spiritual principles. We light a candle for all those who are as yet unaware of the power and presence of Spirit in their lives, and for the space that we are holding for them, and for all faith traditions unnamed in this ceremony. The final candle is the healing candle. It represents the revealing of the divinity at the core of all experience. This is your candle for whatever is in your mind and heart that requires the light.
Thinking a lot today about this notion of inclusivity, and one of the things that came up for me is, what if you are experiencing life and there's someone in your life that you don't want to include? Anyone have anybody in their life like that? You know, I think sometimes we explore the notion of love only, and like, we have to just be love only. Well, you know what? Love only begins with self-love, and sometimes self-love is a call to let go of those who have shown you who they are. And if they don't work for you, it's okay. It's okay. They'll work for somebody else. There are people in my life who don't work for me, and I've said adios to them. So I'm just going to let you all off the hook that inclusivity doesn't mean you have to include everyone. We get to have some discernment in our lives as well. That's part of the learning process of life, though, and everything is meant to be learned. Think about that idea. Everything is meant to be learned. As we experience life, it is a learning opportunity if we are willing to accept it as a learning opportunity. I look at this form of celebration, this form of Sunday service, as an opportunity to learn in many ways, and also challenge myself in what it is I think I know and what it is I think I believe. And it's why I also express every single week that I'm not here to tell you what to think, I'm not here to tell you what to believe, and there may be things that butt up against your belief system. Me saying that there may be people in your life who do not warrant inclusion, that may be butting up against the belief system of some people here today. Just check in. See, how do you feel about that? How do you feel about that? It is not to say that we don't try, but I also think that we need to live our lives with discernment and remember, love only begins with ourselves. It begins with ourselves. We have to be willing to accept love in our own minds and our own hearts for ourselves. And you know what inevitably happens? We find that those who come into our lives become reflections of that self-love, and we cannot exclude any of them because who we are attracting into our experience are perfect representations of that love only. There is nothing that you know that cannot be reconsidered or relearned. And so I love singing. And sometimes I have to ask myself, am I choosing to sing love songs or am I choosing to sing the blues? I'm leaning on the side of love songs more and more these days, singing the blues a little bit less. There's some challenging lyrics in that song I just sang because it is asking us to look at the breadth of experience. There's a lyric that says, in this beautiful life, it's a beautiful life, right? I think it's a beautiful life. In this beautiful life, we may feel some sorrow. We may. It's possible. It's a double-edged knife, but there's always tomorrow. We are always empowered into a new frame of mind that allows whatever sorrow we may be feeling in the experience of life to dissipate. I've had some sorrow in my life. Is there anyone who hasn't had sorrow in their lives? At some point or another. I've had challenges in my life. If you have not had a challenge in your life, please join me up here. The mystics of the world, part of the journey of their illumination was through the challenges that they experienced. Do you think Jesus never had a challenge? It's called the Passion of the Christ. You know, the word passion actually means suffering. We have a different meaning for it now. Here's what I've come to in my years in this field of spiritual study. I have figured out what the purpose of life is. I have figured it out. Would you like me to tell you what the purpose of life is? The purpose of life is to experience life fully. That's the purpose of life. The purpose of life is to experience it fully, with abandon. With abandon. What? Yeah. And here's the good news. Since we are always thinking, does anyone ever not think? Because we're always thinking. And since we are always thinking, and creative mind, this infinite creative mind is always responding, then this creative mind must be constantly creating something for us rooted in our thoughts, rooted in our beliefs, rooted in the feelings we have around our thoughts and our beliefs. I think sometimes we come into the philosophy of new thought. Gosh, the glasses are off a lot today. It's going to be one of those days. I think we come into the philosophy of new thought, many of us, and we hear, we're here to live the most extravagant, magnificent life we can. We start every Sunday saying, I am magnificent, you are magnificent, right? What does magnificence really mean? Because for me, magnificence means absolutely living life with abandon. And yet, my creative thinking sometimes brings into my experience some experiences that are not so fun. So I'm just going to invite you to check in for a moment. What are you thinking right in this moment? This is a rhetorical question. What are you thinking right in this moment? Are you aware of what it is you are thinking right in this moment? And then take the next step in considering what it is you are thinking. Is it a thought that you want to have demonstrated in your experience of the world? Now, we use that word demonstrate. It's a jargon term that we use. Demonstrate basically means to manifest, to have come into expression in our experience. But every thought that we have on some level is going to demonstrate in our experience. And the power of new thought is saying that we can actually take charge of our thoughts. We can take charge of our beliefs, and therefore we can take charge of the flow and expression of our lives. So, Is it a thought you would like to demonstrate? That thought that came to you when I asked you the question, what are you thinking right in this moment? And if it is, if it's a yes to that question, is that something I want to demonstrate? Yes, great. And if it's a no, then stop thinking that thought. And some of you may be out there going, but how? How do I stop thinking a thought, right? How do I stop it? Anyone ever try to stop thinking a thought? Don't think about purple elephants. So I think I may have led you astray in ministry a little bit. You know, I love that video of Bob Newhart. I know I reference this video all the time. It's one of my favorites, that Bob Newhart video from Mad TV where he's playing a therapist, go figure, and the client comes in and says, I'm afraid of being buried alive in a box. And he says, I can solve this for you in just a moment. Stop it, is what he says to the client, right? But I think that we may be leading ourselves astray in that frame of mind by saying we must stop the thinking of the thoughts that are erroneous. No, the answer, I think, needs to be start it. Start it. It's not about stopping the thought. It's about starting a new thought. Right? And as we think new thoughts, what ends up happening is those erroneous thoughts kind of get crowded out, and what we find is that we stop letting them dominate our minds. And as they stop dominating our minds, then our lives, the quality of our lives is enhanced. But it all begins within mind, within consciousness. I started a class yesterday, the Foundations class, Foundations of New Thought. It is the foundational teaching. It's essentially New Thought 101. If you've never taken class before, if you're new to this philosophy, I always say this is where it begins. And we talked about, first of all, divine principle. We root everything in a divine principle. And we have a paraphrased version that was coined by Emma Curtis Hopkins. The divine principle is this: we are spiritual beings living in a spiritual universe governed by a spiritual law. That's where we begin. That spiritual law is a law of mind action. It is a law of causation. It is a law that is within each and every one of us that is flowing forth into expression. An easier way of perhaps understanding this law of mind action is to say it's a law of cause and effect. Mind is the cause, the effect is everything we experience. And so, the divine mind, the infinite consciousness, does not know the difference between yes and no. If it hears a thought that says, I will not experience lack, what it is hearing is lack is part of your experience. I'm going to give you more to consider that you don't have to experience lack. So the erroneous thought is a thought of lack. If we are looking to change something in our life, how about we start affirming the abundant nature of the divine and knowing that that is our identity as well. And so only abundance is what I accept in my life. I don't even go to the thought of something other than abundance any longer. So that's how we start it. We start a new thought and we crowd out that which is not sufficient to the expression of a quality life. It used to make me crazy, that idea of, stop a thought. Now, we do have thoughts that are rooted in there, right? We have those core beliefs that are rooted in there. There's thoughts that kind of keep playing themselves out. Those thoughts rooted in precedent, and those thoughts prejudice our minds. They prejudice our experience. Right? That prejudice, what does prejudice mean? Prejudice means it's a preformed opinion. This is a dictionary definition. A preformed opinion, usually an unfavorable one, that is based on insufficient knowledge, irrational feelings, or inaccurate stereotypes. And we have thoughts that become precedent in our lives that are rooted in prejudice. We all have them. I want to be really clear. No one is immune from this. But part of the power of new thought is to allow ourselves to go on the exploration, to bring to the level of awareness those prejudicial ideas that we have, so that we can actually step into doing something about them by starting a new thought. And here's the really great news. Thomas Troward, one of the great leaders in New Thought, had this to offer to us. He said, principle is not bound by precedent. Principle, the infinite principle of creation, what we are creating in our lives is not bound by precedent. Now, precedent, just as a reminder, precedent means anything that has happened preceding this moment, an earlier event. We often establish precedent in our lives as an example or a guide. But principle is not bound by precedent. Principle is not bound by any earlier event that we may regard as an example or a guide, except to the degree that we allow it. Except to the degree that we allow it. So I also want to be very clear. Precedent is not meant to be confused with precedence. They're two different words. Precedence has to do with priority of importance. Right? We have a list that shows precedence, a hierarchical structure. Precedent is really specifically related to an earlier event. So, if our preformed opinion is based on insufficient knowledge, irrational feelings, or inaccurate stereotypes, let us consider that we are in charge of changing it. Yeah? That's what I choose to do, but it's work. Oh, doesn't have to be toil, but it is work. It is a call to each and every one of us to be in a state of awareness all the time about what it is we are thinking, what it is that is flowing forth from our belief system, and determining in every moment, having discernment to understand in every moment, does this belief work for me, or is it working counter to the quality of life I would like to have? Now, here's the thing that's good about all of this. So if our preformed opinion is based on insufficient knowledge, that's easy to correct. Educate yourself. That's how we address insufficient knowledge. Are you willing to go on the journey of educating yourself, to not take everything for granted? If I am not here to tell you what to think or what to believe, then what am I here to do? I am here to invite you to hear the teaching, but question it. Question it. That is how we learn. We form those opinions, we form those ideas based on knowledge. So educate yourself. That's how we address insufficient knowledge. Now, what I really want to focus on is that second aspect of these ideas, that preformed opinions are based on insufficient knowledge, but this is one that gets me. Some of our preformed opinion is based on irrational feelings. That's hard. Because what do you do about irrational feelings? You are in charge of your feelings. You are in charge of your feelings. Wait, what? My feelings don't just happen? They don't just happen. You are in charge of your feelings. I asked yesterday, and I don't know that I ever completed the conversation, but I asked in class yesterday, I said, has anyone ever woken up on the wrong side of the bed? Actually, we did kind of finish that conversation because most people said yes, and then I just go back to bed. But when you wake up on the wrong side of the bed, there's a feeling tone in that, right? It is a feeling that doesn't feel quite right. You feel a little sour. It's like, oh, this is going to be a rough day. You are not relegated to live with that feeling all day. It takes a decision to change it. How do you do that? Well, first of all, recognize that the feeling is happening. And then breathe. Oh, breathe. I do this as a practice. I breathe in the morning. I breathe all the time. Which is a good thing. Because if I didn't, well, then we'd have a whole other story. But I purposefully take charge of the breath. I take in a breath. And in that time that it takes me to purposefully inhale and purposefully exhale, I choose to recreate the feeling tone. I choose to remember who I am, to remember that I am not the result of a feeling. The feeling is the result of my state of mind. And if you don't think you can do this, here's my call to you. Just try. What have you got to lose? Just try. And then I think of Yoda. Do or do not. There is no try. But if try is where you are, it's okay to try. It's okay to try. The call is really this. Step into an awareness of how much precedence we place on erroneous thought. How much precedent, I did it, I used the wrong word. How much precedent do we place on erroneous thought? How much do we let erroneous thought take precedence in our mind and become precedent for the experience that we are having? How much do we do that? Here's the good news. Part of the practice of new thought is to develop a new habit of being so that we can establish precedent that is working in our favor, so we don't have to work at it all the time. You can strengthen the erroneous, or you can strengthen the new thought by continuing to lift it up in mind. What are you choosing to lift up? You can strengthen a new thought by lifting it up, by exercising the mind, like in the gym. You know, the muscle you focus on strengthens. I've started going back to the gym. I got a personal trainer. And today, so 2 days, you know, it's always 2 days later that you feel the effects, right? It was legs and core that I worked 2 days ago. So if you see me hobbling around a little bit, it's because I'm in a little bit of pain. But the changing of our thoughts and the building of that mental muscle does not require pain, does not need to be painful. But like in the gym, the muscle you focus on strengthens. What you focus on becomes stronger in your life. Declare the truth of yourself. What is the truth of yourself? You get to determine that, really. But I think there are some inherent truths that we all are living. We are the expression of love. We are the expression of light. We are the expression of infinite life. We are the expression of beauty, power, joy, infinite wisdom. We are the expression of absolute intelligence. We are the expression of understanding. We are the expression of imagination and intuition. We are the expression of the divine because that is our identity. Myrtle Fillmore, in one of her healing letters, there's a book that was published called The Healing Letters of Myrtle Fillmore. And in these letters, there's so many beautiful nuggets of inspiration. One of them, she wrote this: "You ask what restored me to vigorous health? It was a change of mind from the old that believes in sickness. To the Christ mind of life and permanent health, be transformed by the renewing of your mind." It's written in Romans 12:2. I applied spiritual laws effectively. That's the whole teaching. What restored Myrtle Fillmore to vigorous health? What can restore any one of us to the expression of life that we seek? A life that is rooted in health, wealth, absolutely magnificent relationships, and magnificent creative expression, and so much more. Apply spiritual laws. Begin with the law of I am. The power of this particular philosophy for me is in its practicality. And one of the practical ways that we can engage in this philosophy is to speak affirmatively, to engage in affirmations, to be in agreement with your good and be willing to say it out loud, to crowd out the discordant thoughts with declarations of truth and establish something new in the now. If this was not a practical philosophy, for me, I probably wouldn't still be doing what I do. So I'm going to give you some guidance today for affirmation practices and encourage you all to incorporate affirmation as part of your daily routine. So number one, the encouragement in affirmation practices is this: speak in the first person. I am is a great way to start. I am, right? We say every week, I am magnificent. I am light. I am life. I am love. You hear me say that. I express it to you on my mindful moments on the video every weekday. But you are these attributes. Claim your good with I am statements. That's number one. Speak in the first person, I am. Speak in the present tense, as though what it is you seek is accomplished right here, right now, because there is no time in the infinite mind. And here's what happens if we put it in the future tense. It's not, I am living a radiant and healthful life. That's a good affirmation. If you say, I am going to live a radiant and healthful life, then as long as you keep affirming, I am going to live a radiant and healthful life, well, there it is. I'm going after it. It's out there. I'm going to get it someday. But as long as you speak it in the future tense, it will always be in the future. So affirm it in this moment. And so what I'm going to encourage us all to do is to finish affirmatively this expression of a spiritual idea. I would love for us to relax right where we are. As I often say, to acknowledge the fact that there is no time in the infinite mind, let go of anything that has preceded this moment, release anything that we anticipate is to unfold in the future, and allow an awareness of the present moment as the presence, for we are, each and every one of us, the presence of the divine. And I invite you to say these words after me. I am healthy.
I am healthy.
I am creatively fulfilled. I have blessed relationships. I am a prosperity magnet. I am. I am. I am. I am that I am. I am that I am. Peace and blessings. You are magnificent. This week's home practice is this. Write daily affirmations that support your well-being and divine identity. Post them where you will see them and read them regularly. So write them out. Post them where you will see them and read them regularly. I like to put them on my the mirror in my bathroom, because also I get to see myself and the affirmation, and it works on so many levels. Keep in mind, first person, present tense, I am is a good place to start. By next Sunday, you can have at least 7 affirmations to support you. Please do this every single day. That's the home practice I encourage this week.